How many of you are the loving owners of pets? Perhaps a dog, or a cat, or maybe even a rabbit or lizard. You feed them, bathe them, love them. They are as much a member of your family as your pets or children are. Now imagine your pet in an animal shelter, caged up, minimal human contact, and the frantic noise of dozens of other pets surrounding it. But at least in an animal shelter, they still have the hope of adoption. As a lab animal, the only certainty is pain, suffering, and death. This is the reality for countless animals all around the world. For them, there's no escape. There's only endless tests and pain, all for the convenience of humans. Because of animal testing's inherent abuse towards animals, the presence of viable alternatives, and the differences between the bodies and biological makeups of humans and animals, animal testing should be eliminated. The pain that lab tests force animals to feel is classified as abuse. Laboratory tests include dripping irritants into eyes to monitor the effects, poisoning with various experimental drugs, infection with diseases, deliberate physical mutilation, and many, many others. One example is the Drazy eye test. This test involves dripping cosmetics, shampoos, or other substances into the eyes of animals, particularly rabbits. The similar Drazy skin test involves rubbing the substance into a shaved patch of skin on the animals' backs. Then, they are monitored and watched for effects of irritation for the next few days. As Monica Engbretson from the Huffington Post points out, this test is 70 years old and heavily outdated. If the animals are too badly damaged by this test, they are killed. If they are not, they are given a bit of time to clean their eyes and are prepared for a new experiment. Furthermore, most lab animals are not protected from cruelty by the law. Though there is a federal anti-cruelty law called the Animal Welfare Act, it protects only 5% of research animals. As Care 2 points out, quote, for 95% of animals in labs, researchers aren't legally required to provide decent housing or any anesthetic or veterinary care at all, end quote. Even further, extreme cases of cruelty in labs and research centers are abundant. An example of this is the case of the New Iberia Research Center monkeys. America's largest private testing lab, the NIRC sits in Louisiana. Its 6,000 plus primates are subject to testing for different medicines and disease treatments. The center is well known and essential to pharmaceutical companies for testing different medicines, but the research center itself is very closed off from the public. ABC News went undercover to examine the inner workings of the center, and what they found was a horrendous instance of animal abuse. The primates were tormented by the workers at the center and given little to no care. The monkeys also exhibited signs of mental breakdown, spitting in their cages, biting of open wounds, and self-mutilation. An intelligent creature was reduced to nothing in this horrific situation. With these examples, it is clear that the torment and pain caused by animal testing to sentient creature makes animal testing reprehensible. Additionally, there are many alternatives to animal testing that should make it obsolete. Alternative methods offer more valid, humane, and more accurate results. They replace the cruel and unusual treatment of animals. Some of these alternatives include the use of real human blood from volunteers, the EpiSkin test, and the 3T3 neutral red uptake phototoxicity test. Using real human blood from volunteers can study contaminants in intravenous medicines accurately and without the use of animals. EpiSkin is an artificial human skin that can test irritants in cosmetics. The 3T3 neutral red uptake phototoxicity test can replace the use of animals to test for medicine-induced sensitivity to sunlight. In addition to these alternative medicines, there are countless others that reduce or eliminate the use of animal testing in the cosmetics industry as well as the pharmaceutical industry. Already, many cosmetics companies have moved away from animal testing. With these alternative methods, animal testing becomes obsolete and should not be used anymore. Furthermore, humans are not like animals. How can we use animals to test how medicines will affect us? Humans and animals are anatomically and biologically different. How a medicine affects an animal can be very different from how it affects the human, making lab results obsolete. Toxicologist Thomas Harding said, "We are not 70-kilogram rats." Physically, internally, mentally, we are different from animals. Humans should not be using such different creatures to approximate the results on their own bodies. Because of these differences, animal testing no longer becomes valid from a scientific research standpoint. With this lack of validity, animal research is no longer necessary. Even so, many companies, laboratories, and scientists declare the usefulness of animal testing. Animal testing has provided countless essential data for life-saving medicines. Animals are not caused undue harm. Animals and humans are more similar than one would think. Chimpanzees and humans share 99% of DNA, and mice are 98% genetically similar to humans. Animal testing is cheap and solves the problem of an overpopulation of animal shelters. However, for all these positives, the plight of the animal still exists, and alternatives to lab animals offer the opportunity for the same results and tests. With the use of alternative tests, the same studies, perhaps even more accurate, can be conducted. Animals suffer and feel just like humans, so any test where they are physically harmed for the sake of science is abuse. Furthermore, many labs and research centers cross the line and enter peer abuse. Despite the sharing of DNA, we are still very different from chimps and mice. The difference in shared DNA between mice and chimps is just 1%, and look how different they are. We are that same percent different from chimps and double that from mice. Imagine how different we are from both of them. Alternative methods can be cheaper and more efficient, and human responsibility can solve the same problem of overpopulation. Undeniably, animal testing has many negatives that simply make it cruel. Animals feel just as we do. They feel pain even though they cannot declare it in a language that we will understand. As a pet owner and animal lover myself, I simply cannot imagine what millions of animals must have to go through every day. Imagine their fear, their hunger, their confusion. For the lab animals, death is a merciful outcome for the lucky. For the less fortunate, more tests, more pain, and more suffering awaits. Lab testing on animals is wrong and obsolete. The animals cannot speak for themselves, so they must be given a voice. You can be part of the cry for justice.